The day my fiancée's painting sold for an incredible price, a reporter asked her, "Is the man in the painting your fiancé, Mr. Miller?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Daniel and I are just friends. I held up my hand, showing the prominent ring on my fourth finger. Of course we're just friends. After all, I'm already married. That evening, everyone in the room saw Eliza, who had been enjoying the attention just a second before, look like she was about to cry. The new masterpiece from the celebrated painter Eliza Vance, titled The Harbor, had just sold for a 9-figure sum. At the party to celebrate, a pushy reporter asked, "Ms. Vance, hello, the man in The Harbor, the one with the semi-nude back. Is that your fiancé, Mr. Daniel Miller?" People in the crowd started to join in. Who else would it be? Everyone in New York knows the only man in Eliza's paintings has always been Daniel. That's right. They've been together for 8 years. They're the art world's perfect couple, so devoted to each other. Daniel was with her when she was a nobody, all the way to the huge success she is today. How many men are willing to spend 8 years supporting a woman's career like that? They weren't wrong about the history. Eliza and I met when we were 18. 8 years ago, we were the 2 most promising students under our mentor, Mr. Harrison. Then, a fire changed everything for me. My hand was badly crushed, damaging the bones and tendons. I could never hold a paintbrush the same way again. With no other choice, I had to give up painting and became the person managing things behind the scenes for Eliza. And she, with her talent and dedication, climbed higher and further every day. At just 20, she won first prize in a major international painting competition. In the next few years, she won almost every big award there was. Eliza's fame grew rapidly, and she reached the peak she had always dreamed of. Thinking about this, I found myself gripping my wine glass a little tighter. The reporter who asked the first question now looked thrilled, clearly sensing drama. "We heard a rumor that you'll be proposing to Mr. Miller here tonight at the gala. Is that true?" Just then, a spotlight focused on my face. Someone in the crowd began chanting, "Propose, propose, marry her, marry her!" Before I could say anything, Eliza, back on the stage, cleared her throat twice. The spotlight moved back to her. Eliza tapped her fingers on the podium and gave a little laugh. "I'm sorry, but Daniel and I are business partners at the studio. We're just friends. He's not my fiancé, and the man in the painting isn't him." As soon as she finished speaking, a complete hush fell over the room. All eyes turned back to me. I could see confusion, pity, and some knowing looks in the crowd. Eliza's gaze passed over me from the stage. It felt mocking, almost cold. It was as if seeing me embarrassed made her happy. But I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. I looked up and gave a bright smile. Flashing the very noticeable ring on my left ring finger, I said playfully, "Of course the great painter's fiancé isn't me. After all, I'm already spoken for." That night, everyone saw Eliza, who had been the center of attention just a moment before, suddenly look like she was holding back tears. A year ago, on December 24th, it was my birthday. Eliza, who had promised weeks before to spend it with me, was nowhere to be found. I called her 16 times, but she didn't pick up a single one. I waited until midnight. The clock struck 12, and in the deep silence, my birthday passed. I lit a single candle for myself. The small flame flickered. My mind went back 8 years, to this exact day. That quiet, reserved girl, she held out a cake she had baked herself, her face red as she said, "Daniel, give me 8 years. In 8 years I'll marry you, okay?" The candlelight from the cake made her face look warm. I blew out the candle in front of me and silently ate the cake by myself. The frosting melted on my tongue, tasting bitter and stale. At 1 a.m, I finally got a message from her. She texted, "Sorry, Daniel, I'm busy. Can I make up for your birthday tomorrow? I'm so sorry, Daniel." I had to laugh a little. Such a formal name. She used to call me Dan, and when we were close, she'd whisper Danny over and over. But she never just called me Daniel like that. I didn't sleep at all that night. She didn't come home. When I woke up, I checked my social media out of habit. A familiar profile picture caught my eye, and I felt my chest tighten. The timestamp was 1:30 a.m. It was Julian. 10 years. I'm finally back. Things have changed, but I'm glad someone was still willing to wait for me. The photo he posted was of a woman's back in a black trench coat. It was a new fall-season Burberry. I had picked it out for Eliza myself. The next day, Eliza had to attend an important gallery exhibition. The event started at 2 in the afternoon. At 4 o'clock, I finally saw her at the entrance. She had dark circles under her eyes, and her hair was a mess. Even the collar of her pantsuit was crooked. The event organizers were furious. They couldn't believe the guest of honor was 2 hours late. I apologized over and over, bowing and trying to smooth things over. They only calmed down after I offered to compensate them with 2 of Eliza's new paintings. Eliza stood in front of me with her head down, looking like a child who had been caught doing something wrong. "I'm sorry, it was my fault." "Where were you last night?" I asked, getting straight to the point. A brief look of panic crossed her eyes. "I went to pick up Julian. He just got back to the country. You know he doesn't have any family here. I'm the only one he knows. I wasn't going to go, but he called me like 10 times. I had to go. I took him to his hotel, and then I spent the rest of the night at the studio." A child caught in a lie. They ramble, making up excuses and offering too many useless details. The more you explain, the more you're trying to hide. It's a classic sign of a liar. Her face was flushed, and she was talking very quickly. I knew her. She was only half lying. She probably did go to the studio later that night, but not until 4 in the morning. "You could have just told me that," I said, straightening the collar of her shirt. She grabbed my hand. "I was afraid you'd be angry." "Why would I be angry? Isn't he your brother?" "That's right. Life can be strange. Julian was her stepbrother. Years ago, Eliza's mother and Julian's father got married. They each brought a child into their new family. 10 years ago, Julian had chased a woman across the ocean, throwing everything away for her. In the end, he lost it all. His ex-girlfriend, Chloe, cheated on him when his career failed, took all his money, and even got full custody of their newborn child. With no other options, he came back home in disgrace. Just like Eliza said, he had nothing left. Julian just got back and hasn't found a job yet. He used to study painting with us, remember? How about we let him work part-time at our studio, just until he finds something permanent? After she spoke, she gently hugged me, her warm breath on my neck. "Trust me, Danny. Once I get Julian settled, I have a surprise for you." I wanted to say no, but before I could get the words out, Julian appeared in the studio doorway. He was still handsome, even charming. Time hadn't seemed to affect him. It always favors attractive people. He wasn't even trying, but in a simple white shirt, he was enough to make people look twice. "Long time no see, Daniel," he said. The curve of his smile was perfect, even highlighting the small mole under his eye. A warm, disarming smile. The kind that makes it hard to say no. But I said no, anyway. With Eliza's income and fame, she could support 10 of him for the rest of his life, even if he never worked a day. Julian's handsome face stiffened. He said, "No, a man has to have his own career. If you're dependent on a woman, she'll dump you the second you're no longer useful. The thought of what he'd been through abroad must have hit him, because his eyes filled with tears, and his voice cracked. Eliza, standing next to him, frowned and quickly comforted him. "Julian, I'll never abandon you. Never." I fell silent. What a touching display of sibling affection. But our studio really didn't need any more staff. I politely refused, explaining that we weren't hiring, but I promised to use my connections to find him a good job. But the next day, I saw Julian at the studio anyway. He was wearing a slim-fit shirt and slacks that highlighted his athletic build, broad shoulders and a narrow waist. His short, dark hair was slightly damp. He was posing, sitting quietly in the middle of the studio. My students were gathered around him, sketching his portrait. Just then, my assistant, Alex, ran over, frowning. "Daniel, this guy showed up first thing this morning. I couldn't stop him. He bought gifts and snacks for the kids, and he's got them wrapped around his finger. He really knows how to charm people. He heard today was our life drawing class, and just sat down to let them draw him. He's like a ghost you can't get rid of." I was confused. "You don't like him?" Alex's brow furrowed. "There's something off about him, Daniel. You should be careful." Julian was like this years ago, too. He loved being the center of attention, having everyone focus on him. He used to be incredibly talented. But slowly, he lost his passion for painting. He said it was boring and tedious, and he hated getting his hands and clothes dirty. He'd rather spend his days dressed perfectly in stylish clothes, sitting in the middle of the studio for hours on end. He had us draw him. He loved the feeling of all eyes being on him. But no matter how much talent you have, if you don't work at it, it fades away. Eventually, Julian's talent disappeared into mediocrity. He fell in love with the glittering, superficial world and didn't even wait to graduate from college before running off with some rich girl he met online. That was 10 years ago. The kids at the studio loved him. After class, they crowded around me, begging to have Julian be the model for their next portrait class. Alex leaned in. "You disrespectful little brats, you can't call him Julian. It's Mr. Julian. Or Uncle Julian." Across the room, I saw Julian's face darken. I had to admit, Julian's strategy of winning everyone over first and asking for permission later was effective. He successfully landed a job as a life-drawing model at the studio. "Don't worry, Daniel. I won't be a bother for long. Just give me a month. As soon as I find a job I like, I'll be out of your hair." But a month later, things took a turn. That day, New York saw its first snow of the season. One of Eliza's paintings from 6 months prior had sold for a good price, and the studio was throwing a party to celebrate. The dinner was held at an exclusive club. But the moment the waiters came out, we were all stunned. Julian stood out among the servers. He was wearing a uniform, his ears and the tip of his nose red from the cold. One of our colleagues recognized him. "Julian, what are you doing waiting tables here?" everyone exclaimed. Julian froze. His eyes turned red, and he bit his lip. He stammered, but couldn't get a full sentence out. His attempt to look brave was heart-wrenching. Suddenly, he stumbled, his ankle twisting. He lost his grip on the tray, and a tureen of hot soup was about to spill all over his legs. Eliza bolted from her seat. She threw her own arm out to block the soup. The hot liquid splashed all over her forearm, her hand, the hand that painted a picture that just sold for $8 million. The truth is, that soup wouldn't have landed on Julian's legs. It was tilting to the left. It would have all spilled onto the floor. But Eliza panicked. Maybe she was just that worried about him. She didn't even think about her own hand. She had a major international art conference the next day, and I was worried an injury would affect her. I rushed to get some ice for her arm. Eliza's face was grim, and she didn't say a word. I looked at the burn and breathed a sigh of relief. Thank God the soup wasn't too hot. It should be fine. Julian stood nearby, his eyes red with distress. He kept apologizing, blaming himself. It's okay, it's not serious, I said, trying to calm him down. But Eliza suddenly yanked her arm away from me. She stood up, gently wiped a tear from the corner of Julian's eye, and pulled him into a hug right in front of me, comforting him. The next second she turned to me, her gaze icy, as if she didn't know me. In front of the entire studio, she said, "Of course, all you care about is the money. You're afraid my hand won't be able to paint anymore, aren't you? A whole bowl of soup spills, and you don't even ask if Julian's legs are okay. You just check on my hand?" What? Daniel, if you hadn't forced Julian out, he wouldn't be freezing his ass off working in a place like this, and I wouldn't have gotten burned. What? I make so much money for you every year. Isn't that enough? You really couldn't make room for one person? I was speechless. Later, Eliza stood in the snow all night, begging for my forgiveness. She said she was just upset. He was her brother, after all. She only said those hurtful things in the heat of the moment. I laughed coldly. Do you really think he was there to be a waiter? Eliza looked at me, completely baffled. I asked the club manager. He started today. He knew we were having our party there. He went there to put on a show. Enough! Eliza cut me off. A vein throbbed in her temple as she glared at me. She clenched her fists so tightly that the burn on her left hand started to bleed, drops of red falling onto the snow. She had never been so harsh with me before. The Eliza I knew always spoke to me in a soft, gentle voice, the very picture of tenderness. For the first time, because of another man, she was screaming at me. I won't let you talk about Julian like that. It was then that it dawned on me. Ever since Julian had returned, Eliza had never once called him brother to his face. Eliza and I gave each other the silent treatment for a while, but I still had to go to the studio every day. Eliza and I had built Crestwood Studio from the ground up. After I could no longer paint, I poured all my energy into it. It was like my child. Every little piece of it was my heart and soul. Julian was still at the studio, doing what he loved most. Only now he wasn't just a model for the students. He had become Eliza's model, too. I can't remember exactly when he started appearing in her paintings, or maybe he had never left them in the first place. Eliza used to love painting me. She would run her fingers through my short hair, trace the lines of my face, and tell me I was the most perfect work of art. Almost every one of her paintings had the shadow of a young man in it. She said it was me, and I was naive enough to believe her. Thinking about it now, I had to laugh. It turns out I was just a stand-in all along. I broke up with Eliza for good 6 months ago. That day I pushed open the studio door. In the glow of the setting sun, Julian was leaning back on the sofa, half naked. His eyes were half open, a look of serene, post-coital bliss on his face. His messy black hair was stuck to his collarbones, chest, and stomach. Beneath the strands of hair, I could see dark red hickeys running from his ear all the way down his neck. And Eliza stood there, paintbrush in hand, capturing the scene on canvas. When they saw me, they both panicked. "Daniel, it's not what you think. Let me explain." In her haste, Eliza knocked over a can of paint. White paint, spilled everywhere. Mixed in with the pure white was a sticky, yellowish fluid. At the same time, a foul, fishy smell hit me, and I felt sick to my stomach. A feeling of deep disgust and betrayal washed over me. It was vile. I turned around and walked out immediately. Eliza reacted quickly. She rushed out to block my path. "Daniel, it's not what it looks like." My heart felt dead. The woman I had loved for 8 years, the woman who had once risked everything to pull me from a fire, had become so foul and depraved. I laughed coldly. "Then tell me, what is the truth? Don't tell me you were sacrificing yourself for your art. Do you have any idea who that man is? He's your brother!" I practically screamed the last sentence. Seeing me like this, Eliza was terrified. She stammered, "Julian's not my brother. He never was. I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm so sorry. You know I've been racking my brain for my entry for the Lukey Prize. I couldn't think of anything." At this point, she seemed to be on the verge of a breakdown. The theme of the competition is frenzy, destruction, and rebirth. "So," I cut her off. "Frenzy, destruction, and rebirth means doing sordid things with him and mixing your filth into what should be pure, untainted, white paint." She froze, just staring at me. I looked into her eyes and sneered. "Wake up, Eliza. The person who needs a rebirth here is me." I pushed past her, my entire body shaking uncontrollably. As I left, I heard Julian, like some spineless creature, lean in and whisper comfortingly in her ear. "Eliza, you were amazing. Daniel doesn't understand art. You give everything for your art. But what has he ever given? For all these years, he's done nothing but take, like a leech using you." He scoffed in the direction I was leaving. "What does he know about art? Remember, Eliza, to the dirty-minded, everything looks dirty." Eliza and I were done. I used the studio's security footage as leverage. She would leave with nothing. There was no way I was handing the studio over to her. "Daniel, are you sure about this?" she asked before she left. "We could continue to run this studio as partners. After all, Crestwood Studio only has the reputation it does today because of me." I didn't even look up. "Hurry up and pack. The cleaning crew will be here soon to disinfect the place." She flew into a rage. "Don't forget, without me, you're nothing." She pulled up my sleeve, revealing the long, winding scar on my arm. "You're just an injured man who can't even hold a paintbrush." Julian came up behind her then, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "An ungrateful, injured man at that. Tisk, tisk, Eliza. If we'd known, you should have just let him burn to death in that fire years ago with that biased mentor of yours." Slap. I slapped Julian across the face. 6 years ago, Eliza and I were still students under Mr. Harrison. He was the best teacher in the world. That day we stayed late at the studio to finish our competition pieces. Mr. Harrison was pouring his heart and soul into helping us. He said that in this year's competition, I had a real shot at first place. But that night a sudden fire broke out. It took him, and it took my artwork. I was trapped in the flames on the verge of passing out. Right before I lost consciousness, I saw Eliza. She was the one who ran into the fire to save me. I was rescued, and my life was saved, but my right hand was badly burned. The nerves and bones were damaged, and I could no longer hold a paintbrush the way I used to, unable to create the art I was satisfied with. Our mentor also died in that fire. Overcome with grief, I stepped into the background. With Eliza, I co-founded Crestwood Art Studio. I became the man behind Eliza. The slap stunned Julian. When he came to his senses, he glared at me and raised his hand high. Just as his hand was about to strike me, a slender hand shot out, grabbing his wrist and pushing him back. "Who gave you permission to hit my person in front of my studio?" A familiar voice. I looked up. It was Maya Chen, Crestwood's biggest investor. Maya was the daughter of the richest man in New York. She was young, but she was known throughout the city as the cool, aloof heiress. Her father was at his wits' end with his good-for-nothing daughter. Years ago, In an attempt to get her to cultivate some inner peace and artistic sensibility, he had funded the creation of what would become Crestwood Art Studio. Seeing it was Maya, Eliza held back Julian, who was about to explode. After all, Eliza's auction in 3 months depended on the Chen family's support. But Julian couldn't let it go. He, who had been the center of attention his whole life, wasn't about to take a slap from me for free. He smoothed the hair I had messed up on his forehead and was about to start insulting me when suddenly one of the studio kids bit him on the thigh. "You weirdo! Don't you dare bully our Mr. Daniel!" At the same time, a dozen more students ran out from behind me, pushing Julian and Eliza away. Julian's face turned, pale with rage. "Daniel, you injured man! Without Eliza and me, you're nothing!" Maya handed me a wet wipe. "Hey, wipe your hand. Just looking at him makes me feel dirty." She gazed after Eliza's retreating figure and sighed. "Tisk, tisk. So tragic. Your girlfriend ran off with another man." I shot her a look. "Miss Chen, you have lipstick on your teeth." I always knew Eliza had a thing for Julian. He was handsome. Among our group of art students, he was easily one of the best looking. He was the object of many a teenage girl's first crush, Eliza included. But childhood crushes rarely pan out. I thought that after Julian left, her crush would have ended too. When she risked her life to pull me from that fire, I thought Julian was finally gone from her heart for good. Eliza was never repulsed by the ugly scars on my body. Sometimes she would trace a galaxy around them. Other times, a field of flowers. Her eyes, too, once brimmed with love for me. I thought that in her heart, there was only me. Not long after Eliza and Julian moved out, the ownership shares of Crestwood were redistributed. I still owned my 30%. Eliza had originally promised to give me her shares of the studio, but she went back on her word. She wanted me to buy her out for $50 million. "Daniel, you can go ahead and release that video if you want, but you should think long and hard about whether it will destroy me or your precious Crestwood studio. Daniel, I don't know what's wrong with you. We were so good. We could have kept going, but you were so determined to break up with me. Nothing happened between me and Julian. It was for my art. You know I would do anything for my art. Sacrifice anything. I thought you of all people would understand." I typed back coldly, "I'll buy your shares." Silence from her end for a moment. "Can't you just back down for once? You're always so aggressive. Besides, where are you going to get that kind of money?" I replied with a poop emoji and blocked her. Then I went to Julian's latest post, "Out with the old, in with the new life," and replied with 2 poop emojis before blocking him too. It was true. I didn't have that kind of money, but Maya did. That night, I knocked on the Chen family's door. When Maya saw it was me, her expression was a little strange. She held the door half-closed, blocking my way. "Daniel? What are you doing here so late?" I pushed past her and walked straight to the sofa. "I can teach you how to paint, but you have to do one thing for me." Now the heiress was putting on airs. "Making deals with me now, are we?" I flicked on the light in her study. An easel stood in the room, and on the table in front of it sat a single egg. On the canvas was the rough outline of that same egg. I pointed at the half-finished drawing. "Did your last teacher teach you this? What are you doing, practicing your Da Vinci eggs?" The Chen family had been in business for generations. By the time it got to Maya's grandfather, the older man had developed a love for nature, art, and self-cultivation. He had a particularly keen eye for painting. He had high hopes for Maya, wishing she would achieve something in the arts. This sentiment directly influenced Maya's father, who, while running the family business, also dabbled in the art world. The Chen family sponsored some of the country's largest exhibitions, top-tier art conferences, and auctions. Maya's father had even invested in Crestwood Studio in her name, hoping she might absorb some artistic sensibility by osmosis. Turns out, Maya was a black hole for art. She had zero talent for painting and had managed to scare off countless famous tutors. Her grandfather had once approached Eliza and me. I declined, citing a weak heart. Eliza was too busy, so teaching Maya was put on the back burner, where it stayed for 3 or 4 years. I never would have imagined that after all this time, Maya would still be stuck on drawing eggs. "But your hand?" Maya finally asked, hesitating. My right hand had been burned in the fire 6 years ago. I hadn't picked up a paintbrush in a long time. I flexed my fingers, then picked up a pencil with surprising dexterity. In moments, I had finished sketching the egg in front of us. Maya was stunned. For 6 years, in the dead of night, I had secretly picked up a brush. I endured the sharp pain, sketching out the images in my mind, one line at a time. At first, I couldn't even hold the brush properly. It kept falling, and I kept picking it up. The scars would tear open and heal again until new flesh grew over them, over and over. Finally, I could complete a whole painting. It wasn't perfect, but I was satisfied. And just like that, Maya fronted the money to buy Eliza's 30% stake. From that day on, Eliza had nothing more to do with Crestwood Studio. Life fell into a routine. I ran Crestwood Studio and, without fail, went to the Chen estate every week to teach Maya how to paint. Eliza's face still graced the covers of art magazines. Only now, the man by her side was Julian. After leaving Crestwood, she used her reputation in the art world to open a new studio. She called it Evanesque Studios. Alex rolled his eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. It would have been fine if we could have just coexisted peacefully. But soon, we ran into each other at a New York art conference. All the city's prominent studios and artists had works on display. For Crestwood Studio, besides a few pieces from my top students, I had selfishly included one of my own secret paintings. The theme of the exhibition was life. As luck would have it, Eliza and I had painted the same subject. She painted a tree. I also painted a tree. And the two paintings were placed side by side, right in the center of the gallery. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Many people stopped to look at the two pieces. As expected of a great artist like Eliza, this pine tree is so lifelike. Yeah, look at her brushwork. It's so delicate. She even painted the tip of every needle. Exactly. Standing tall against the wind. This painting just radiates vitality. Hearing the chatter, Julian's chin lifted another inch. He never even glanced at the painting next to Eliza's. Then people's eyes drifted to the ginkgo tree I had painted. The theme is life. Why paint a ginkgo tree full of yellow leaves? A canvas full of decay doesn't exactly scream life, does it? Julian glanced at the placard next to the ginkgo and saw it was from Crestwood Studio. He sneered. My God, they can't even get the theme right. The theme is life, and you paint decay. I'm telling you, some of these small-time studios shouldn't even bother showing up. Maybe hire a literature teacher to learn how to read a prompt. He didn't know I was the artist. He just assumed it was one of my students. Julian walked up to my painting. And if you're going to paint a ginkgo tree, why paint the roots? What, wasn't it ugly enough? He looked at me and continued. I told you. Without Eliza, Crestwood Studio is nothing. I didn't have time to argue with him. I was here to exhibit, not to be a show-off. The final award presenter was Eliza. When she opened the winner's envelope on stage, she seemed to freeze for a moment. After a long pause, she said, "The first prize for this exhibition goes to the entry from Crestwood Art Studio, the Ginkgo." Julian was shocked. "That's impossible. There must be some mistake." Others in the audience also voiced their doubts. Just then, one of the exhibition judges, Dr. Wallace, stood up calmly. "The theme is life. This painting from Crestwood Studio, the Ginkgo, may appear to show withering leaves, but beneath that thick layer of yellow is a sprawling, tangled root system. Those roots dig deep into the earth, an instinct for survival, a symbol of strength. So what you see is decay and rebirth, but what you don't see is the tenacious will to live. This painting made our judging panel feel a life that death itself had forgotten. The ginkgo tree itself is one of the oldest species on Earth, with a history spanning hundreds of millions of years. The painting's title, "To Live and Then Be Forgotten," also perfectly fits the theme. Therefore, our panel unanimously agrees that the piece from Crestwood Studio is the best in this exhibition. When he finished, the gallery was silent for 2 seconds before erupting in thunderous applause. But one sentence from Julian shattered the harmony. He said, "This painting is a fake. Crestwood doesn't have a student capable of this kind of brushwork. If I'm not mistaken, the style and color palette are the signature method of the late Mr. Harrison." As soon as he said it, the room burst into an uproar. Someone who had seen Mr. Harrison's work immediately pointed out, "Yes, it is indeed his style. As far as I know, Eliza was Mr. Harrison's only student before he passed away. Could this painting be a copy, a forgery?" In an instant, I was the target of everyone's suspicion. Eliza stood on stage, her expression unreadable. She could have cleared my name, told them I was also Mr. Harrison's student, but she didn't. She stood there silently, not saying a word. Just then a commotion came from the gallery entrance. Flanked by security, Maya was escorting her grandfather, the very same old man from the Chen family with the keen eye for painting. Maya led him straight to my painting, the ginkgo. "Grandpa, look! This is Daniel's work. I told you he was amazing. He was Mr. Harrison's star pupil." Mr. Chen stroked his beard. He put on the reading glasses his butler handed him and studied my painting for a long time. Finally, with tears in his eyes, he sighed. "It's him. It's Harrison's style. No doubt about it. What a pity." At the mention of the fire, the entire room fell silent. After a long moment, Julian muttered from the crowd, "So what? I studied under Harrison for a bit, too." "Oh, does less than 3 months before running off count?" Alex, standing next to me, quipped, "I knew Maya had brought her grandfather here on purpose to back me up." That night, I went to her house to thank her. But instead of accepting my thanks, Maya handed me a file. "Don't thank me yet. Take a look at this first." The manila envelope looked old. The seal read, 2013 Phoenix Lane Fire, case numbered 288. It was the fire. Thick smoke, rolling flames. Everything I went through that day came flooding back. My voice trembled. "Why are you showing me this?" Maya opened the file to the last page and pointed to 2 words. "Arson." "No, that's impossible." My heart skipped a beat. That fire had caused devastating losses. 1 dead, 1 injured. Mr. Harrison was dead, and I was injured. Countless pieces of his work were also consumed by the flames. but I remembered the official investigation had ruled it an accident. A few teenagers playing with matches in the alley had caused the tragedy. That's the official story, yes. But have you ever wondered why those kids were playing with fire right under your studio? And who gave them the matches? It was like a switch flipped in my head. She pointed to several photos on the table. This is my gift to you. So, Mr. Daniel, can we skip art class this weekend? Maya asked, blinking up at me like a child earnestly seeking praise. I'm going to need one more favor from you. Back to the day Eliza's painting, The Harbor, sold for a 9-figure sum. A nosy reporter asked her on stage, "Rumor has it you'll be proposing to Mr. Miller here tonight. Is that true?" Eliza just smiled. She said we were just friends, that I wasn't her fiancé, and I flashed the prominent ring on my left hand. Of course not. After all, I'm already spoken for. At that moment, Maya, who had been sitting beside me, stood up and affectionately linked her arm with mine. My goodness! Since when did my husband become someone else's fiancé? The usually cool and composed Eliza was flustered, nearly dropping the microphone. Just then, a dashingly dressed Julian walked onto the stage from the wings. He took Eliza's hand, leaned in, and kissed her on the cheek. Eliza's fiancé is me. How romantic, I said, applauding them. Now then, how about I give you two a wedding gift? I presented the files Maya had given me to the head of the auction house. Show everyone what the great, untouchable artist Eliza is really like underneath. Yes, that file contained the proof of Eliza's crime. Manslaughter. That day, she had used the excuse of buying paint to leave the studio. She'd accidentally dropped a box of matches she had prepared by the studio door. She knew a few mischievous kids liked to play with superhero cards in front of our building. And that box of matches was found by those very kids. Next to the studio door, in the trash can, Eliza had just thrown away a pile of her discarded drawings. On those drawings were pictures of fire-breathing monsters from a TV show. She wasn't sure it would work. It was just a test. A clumsy attempt by her younger self to start a fire. All she wanted was to burn my competition piece, simply because she had overheard Mr. Harrison say I had a chance to win first place. That was all it took for her to harbor such a vicious thought. But she never expected the fire to spread out of control and cause such a disaster. Maybe her conscience got the better of her. She never meant for us to die. That's why she ran back in to save me. In the years that followed, maybe out of guilt, or maybe she really did fall in love with me, she was very good to me. She was never repulsed by the scars on my hand. Eliza's crimes scrolled across the big screen. The police had already gone to her home and found the matches. She had bought 10 boxes in total. Only one remained. She had tried many times before, and on the 9th attempt, everything went according to her plan. She started a fire that destroyed everything. When Julian saw the evidence of Eliza's crimes, he knew it was over. He let go of her hand. Eliza's face was ashen. She looked at me, her eyes filled with both hatred and sorrow. Her lips moved as if she wanted to say something, but no words came out. Just then the auction house brought back her painting. The Harbor, after having it authenticated. It was declared a copy. That's right. For all these years, Eliza had been copying Mr. Harrison's paintings, which she had secretly hidden away. The fire hadn't destroyed all of his work. Before the flames spread, Eliza had quietly moved a portion of his collection and stashed it away. At first, she just imitated his style and brushwork in her own pieces. But later, consumed by greed and fame, she started making 1:1 copies. The auction was voided. Not only that, but she would also face a fine of 3 times the sale price. when one is down, all will jump on him. Julian abandoned her on the spot. I don't really know her. She's the one who was always chasing me, he said, preparing to flee. Don't you run off. There's something for you too, I said, signaling for them to continue the presentation. The following photos were evidence of Julian coordinating with investors to launder money. Eliza's paintings were never worth 9 figures. Everything that happened today was a carefully orchestrated performance by Julian, Eliza, and their financial backer. The money from the auction was just meant to pass through Eliza's accounts before being returned to the backer, with Eliza taking a 10% commission. Julian was involved in all of it, and there it was. The long-lost flame returned, only to become a criminal celebrity. The truth was out. The harbor had become a mirror, exposing all their ugliness. What awaited Eliza and Julian was the full force of the law. The crowd dispersed. I felt as if my soul had been sucked out of my body. I sighed and sat back down in my chair. Outside, the dark clouds were beginning to part, and sunlight streamed through the gaps. Someone sat down next to me. I took the ring off my finger. Thank you for going along with my little act. As a reward, you don't have to do your homework for this week's class. I'll handle your grandfather. Maya let out a soft laugh. She took the ring from me and held it in her palm. When she looked up again, her almond-shaped eyes were full of mischief. She leaned in close to my ear. Daniel, if you really want to thank me, skipping homework isn't quite enough. I froze, confused, and then I felt a cool slip of metal on my finger. The prominent ring was back on my hand. Grandpa said that the Chen family heirloom can only be worn by his grandson-in-law. My name is Maya Chen, daughter of the richest man in New York. My grandpa and my dad love painting. Me? I love my painting teacher. His name is Daniel Miller. It's a nice name. But he doesn't like me. He has a girlfriend. A total snake, but she's an amazing painter. I figure Daniel must like girls who are good at painting. So I found the best teachers in all of New York to teach me. They all said I had talent, but after a few days, they'd always find an excuse to stop teaching me. It was very frustrating. I spent hours practicing every day, and I quietly stayed by Daniel's side. I knew Eliza was a user. I'm younger than her. I knew I could outlast her. Then my chance came. The snake finally showed her true colors and ran off with some other creep. And it was just me and Daniel again. I know he loved her once, but Eliza is a truly awful person. Only a woman can see another woman with such razor-sharp clarity. Daniel didn't seem to get that. So to make him see Eliza's ugly truth once and for all, I started investigating the fire that injured him 6 years ago. And I uncovered a massive secret. Later, Daniel asked me to act with him in a little play. He wanted me to pretend to be his fiancée at Eliza's auction to piss her off. But why would I settle for just a play? This time, I was going to lock him down for good. Definitely.